Welcome to the Create the Life You Want podcast, where we break down the journey of people just like you going from dream to ownership in business acquisitions, franchises, and startups. I'm your host, Jeremy Ames. Today's episode is brought to you ad-free by Guidant Financial. Guidant is America's leading company helping aspiring entrepreneurs use retirement funds to buy or start businesses. If you're committed to buying or starting a business, you can find out more about your funding options by going to www.guidantfinancial.com. That's Guidant financial.com. Now, let's get started with the show. Welcome, everyone, to the Create the Life You Want podcast. Today, I'm joined by Jon Younger, and I'm excited to hear a little bit more about his story. Jon was somebody who went on a mission to solve a problem for a family member, and in trying to solve that problem, found himself a business opportunity. And in trying to figure out how to make that business opportunity work, ended up finding a franchisor that specialized in that particular place. So Jon is a franchisee, but before I give too much away, I just want to say welcome to the show, Jon.
Hey, Jeremy, thank you so much for having me. I appreciate that.
Well, why don't we start with the question I usually start with? Did you always know that you wanted to be a business owner? At what point did some switch flip in your head that said, hey, I might do something crazy like this at some point?
Um, well, I think I have to bring in that I had another business that I created many, many years ago first that got the spirit of doing something on my own going in and kicking in. It is not something that I thought would happen, but it's something that in my environment and in my connections kind of evolved into a situation that started me thinking about, what can I do to be my own person, to be my own boss, and to be a lifestyle entrepreneur.
Well, you're teasing us with no details, Jon. So let's back up. Let's talk about your first experience as a business owner. How did you fall into this?
The first one, again, was all about, it was in the high tech industry, because that's where I come from.
Okay.
It was all about solving a problem, filling a need. There was a business out there that was all about manufacturing batteries and battery packs. I'm going way back, I'm going way back on that one. But it was really the semblance of finding a niche, filling a need, and it was great. It was great.
What were you doing when you came across that battery pack business?
I was a manufacturer's rep,
Okay. So you're
and one of
working
the
with manufacturers doing various things in
yes,
the technology space.
yep.
And so you come across this battery pack maker. What on earth got you thinking, oh, I should buy this business or join this business?
Well, it was really all about they were the only one doing it in the area,
Okay.
so I figured there's got to be room for another person in a different area to do the same thing and to kind of replicate that. So this was really an idea that I picked up from another manufacturer, and seeing that there was a need because there was plenty of space. That's kind of what spurred me on to do it.
Okay. So let's back up here. So you're a manufacturer's rep. You're working with all these different people manufacturing technology.
Yeah.
You come across this battery pack technology that looks really interesting, and you think to yourself, well, these guys are only meeting a part of the market. I think there's this other part of the market that could use this. And then what did you do? Did you go out and start your own?
Well, it was really kind of had to set up the business, had to set up the line. Um, I knew I had customers out there once I started moving along. Did a lot of conversation with people, engineers, a lot of exploratory information, so that before I actually opened, I wanted to make sure that I understood what had to be done and to bring in resources around me to help me do that because I am not an engineer by trade.
Yeah.
I just had an idea, so I brought in some other folks that were kind of like mentors, advice givers,
Yeah.
and just went ahead and heads down and figured it out and sold it years and years ago.
Okay, so manufacturing does not sound like an inexpensive business to get into when you're talking about making technology. So how did you figure out how much this was going to cost and how did you fund it?
Um, Family friends funding in
Okay.
the beginning, and then I built it to a position where I brought a partner in that bought in, and he brought more of the financial part, where I had established, the business itself and the idea itself.
Got it. So you went from manufacturing rep to owner of this battery technology manufacturing company. How many years did you do that for?
15.
15. Okay.
Yeah.
And then you sold it off?
Then I sold it. Yeah.
How long did they make you stick around? Or were they
Not long.
pushing you out the door? Like, get this guy
Kind of,
out of
yeah.
here.
Kind of, yeah.
Okay, so you invest 15 years of your life building out this company and then you sell it, and then what?
Oh, took a year off, relaxed a bit, learned how to snowboard and mountain bike. Then went back into the high tech world of distribution management. Worked for a couple of factories, being a sales manager, and that became incredibly redundant. Especially with mergers and acquisitions and all that kind of thing. So I was laid off
Okay.
and moved into a different type of role of job seeking. But in the meantime, during that job search is when the best part of my life occurred, which is now, which was doing this assisted living locators business. Uh,
Okay, so let's back up. So
yeah,
you get laid off. You're out there searching for a job. At
yeah,
what point did you think, "Oh, I might want to do something different," or maybe you should just walk us through the situation with your family and the assisted living and kind of what
right.
you saw?
Yeah, that's probably the best way to look at it. So I had a family member who developed Parkinson's, and his wife had dementia. Um, and I kind of stayed at arm's length because there were several siblings involved, cousins and whatnot, and I didn't understand what was going on, but I just kind of watched this whole situation unfold, and it really unfolded in a manner of lots of questions in education need to happen, but they weren't getting that through no fault of their own. This kind of thing is not something that you plan to do, and
Yeah.
you don't know what, and I hate this cliche, you don't know what you don't know, but that's the reality of it. So kind of watching this whole process unfold of them being the my cousins trying to find an appropriate assisted living environment for my aunt and uncle. I just saw all this need. I saw a need for someone to be the liaison, someone to be the educator, someone to be help make the decisions when it comes to choosing a healthy environment that's not the home environment. So I then started going to different assisted livings and doing informational interviews so that I could understand the buzzwords and the methodology and the market. Is there a need for somebody like myself or somebody as a liaison intermediary person to really help guide the people looking for assisted living on one hand, but on the other hand, I picked up the importance of the different assisted living communities needing to understand more about their potential residents because
What do you mean by that?
nobody was really talking to each other. They were talking to each other, but the families didn't know what questions to ask. The communities weren't really getting to understand what type of resident they might be getting. So it was providing a lot of a mismatch of information and people.
Got
And I
it.
say mismatch because in this particular case, the family member ended up moving 3 times in 3 years.
Oh,
And
sounds
you just can't
miserable.
do that. Yeah, you just can't do that.
Yeah.
So that even instilled more of this need for this type of person to come in and be the liaison, be the middle person, be the educator.
Yeah.
So my
Sounds like the matchmaker.
kind of like, so part of my tagline is, making the right decision at the right time kind of thing. So
Yeah.
basically matchmaking families with communities and the other way around. It's important for the facilities to know what type of person is going to be moving in. What are their care needs? What do they like to do? What do they not like to do? You don't want them banging on the door at 8 o'clock in the morning for breakfast if they don't get up till 10. things like that.
So you feel this pain acutely when your family members are going through this search for your aunt and uncle. And so you start talking to some local care facilities. How did you figure out how to move forward next?
Well, I thought that the best way for me to establish this kind of a job or kind of position was to go out and meet with the different communities that are out there and just ask them, what's important to you? Is being a liaison or being well, it's a placement agent is basically the professional word for it. Is being a placement agent something that people do? Is it something that you, the facility, like to have, encourage to have? A lot of buzzwords. What's the day in a life of a resident at your building like? What type of resident are you looking for? Who are some of your resources? Your home care companies, your networking organizations, attorneys. How do you do this? If I was going to do this, how do you do it? And that's kind of, as I was going through the process, all informational interviews, Jeremy, just because I wasn't looking for that particular job. I was trying to learn about it.
Mm-hmm.
So I got a lot of good information, and it kind of kept spurring me on, going, this is really something that is important, something that I would really like to do. It is the most human thing I've ever done. It's not high-tech sales.
Yeah, and it's not cranking out widgets on a manufacturing line.
No, no. I mean, so it is the most rewarding thing I've ever done. It really validates what I do, and people talk. Another cliche I don't like is I just want to help people, but it's not so much that as I'm influencing a very important decision that they're going to make.
Yeah. So you have this hypothesis, it's validated by all these informational interviews you do. Then what?
Well, then I started saying, okay, well, I'm going to go for a job. I'm going to try to be a salesperson at one of these assisted living communities.
Okay.
So I started doing real interviews, and I kept getting turned down because didn't have experience in the healthcare industry, and I didn't have that kind of experience. So the last time I was told no, I'd always finish like second, to whatever it was. That's when I decided. That's at the same time I was in touch with a franchise coach,
Yep.
and she put me in front of a couple different franchises, and this one, Assisted Living Locators, happened to pop up. And its model is and was at the time and still is exactly what I was looking to do.
So you couldn't get the job you wanted, so you said, screw this, I'm just going to make my own.
Yep. And I'm so grateful, Jeremy, because I realized that I'm not stuck in one particular building. I'm representing all of them.
Yeah.
So I'm able to help families figure out what is the best place, as opposed to, hey, you got to come to this place, you got to come to my place.
Got it. So the places you were interviewing were to be the sales rep for an individual community as opposed to someone who was helping people decide which community was the best fit for their family
Yes.
member.
Yes.
Got it. So you working with a franchise coach, you get connected, sounds like surreptitiously, like you weren't even giving them this clue that you wanted to be in this particular industry, and she puts in front of you this business that says, hey, that's what I've been wanting to do.
Yeah.
So was it just a no-brainer at that point? What did the process look like from there?
It quickly became a no-brainer, but the process then again was to call the franchisor and ask lots of questions and get interviewed and do the interviewing. And it was right where I wanted to go. And I've always been one to take a risk here and there, to get to a position that, I've done a few things that didn't work out in between layoffs, but you just reached down and started again. And this has been great. This has been 8.5 years.
Oh, wow. So you've been at this for a while.
Yeah. Yep.
Okay, so you meet this franchisor. Sounds like you like what you hear. What was the initial investment you had to make to get this business up off the ground, and how did you fund this one? Was it different than what you did the first time?
Oh, yeah. So this was much less expensive, about $50,000. There's no brick and mortar. You work out of your home. You do what make your own hours, do the things that you have to do. And so what I did was I didn't want to be in debt, so I didn't want to take a loan. And somebody, and I wish I could remember, maybe it was my franchise coach, mentioned that there are folks like Guidant Financial out there that I could use some of my 401k IRA stuff, retirement savings, and use that to to invest in the company, buy the company. And because, neither am I a CPA or IRS person, or, learning that doing this, funding a business through your retirement fund, the government really likes to take a good look at that, make sure you're not abusing or misusing the funds. So Guidant Financial, I discovered them as a company who keeps it compliant and put it all above board, and very helpful, very easy. It was very easy. They are also a franchise, but they were very easy to work with and get established.
Got it. So you decide on this franchise concept. Sounds like it's a um, pretty low bar to get into from an investment standpoint. You
Yeah.
decided to use a retirement fund investment, so you weren't going to have debt on the business.
Yeah.
All right, so presumably you make that happen, you roll these funds over, you invest in this company, you pay the franchisor, and then what? You're just opening your doors?
Hit the ground running.
Okay.
Just they were good as far as kind of laying a base work of what I need to be doing. But because this is such a personal relationship with the families, it's such a it's a life-changing event when folks have to look at possibly putting their parents into an assisted living environment
Yeah.
or a skilled nursing home environment. Then I went back around and did a ton of networking. I was out every single day for, the first 5, 6 years. It took about 2 years before I made any money. And I knew that going into it. So I set my own expectations.
Yep.
I wasn't expecting to make billions or millions or thousands when I first started. I figured it would take a couple of years, and it did. And again, it was really all about the same kind of thing I have always done, is research and talk to people. Just talk to people. What do you do? What do I need to know? How do I
Yep.
do this? Who do I talk to? Who do I meet? So I spent a lot of time meeting different people and understanding what they do to see if there was some type of synergy between what they do, like a home care company as an
Yeah.
example, and what I do and how we can kind of work together.
Yeah, let's dig into that because I think this is one of the maybe most overlooked things for new entrepreneurs is what do you do to get out there and actually build the initial momentum in your business? So maybe break down for us, what did you do to get out there and network and meet people? And what did you learn about what worked and what started to generate value for the business?
Right. It took a long time for me to learn what worked and what didn't work. So I started by going to a couple different assisted living communities and sitting with the salesperson because I knew that, or I thought I knew, which turned out to be correct, that I would be important to them as they would be important to me. Because if I was doing and saying and learning, I would be helping them by bringing potential residents to them. If my job was to bring them to the water, and
Yep.
it's a salesperson's job to close that because they know their building and I don't know it as well, and I shouldn't know it because I don't work it every single day like that. So I was going around to a half a dozen of these places and just asked them, who give me some of the networking groups that you belong to. Who were some of the home care companies? Because I had an idea of who would be referral sources, from the franchisor.
Yep.
Who are you using for LLR attorneys? Who are you using for home care? Who are you using for transportation, emergencies or not? And then I would connect with them. A lot of one-on-one stuff. And what I found out
You just
that,
take them to coffee or go
yeah,
visit them in their office or bring them
yeah,
donuts? What?
coffee, lunch, go to their office. And what I found worked really well is I never really told them what I did. I mean, I told them what I did, but I spent all my time asking them about what they did and questions for them because I found that my showing an interest in what they had to do made me more legitimate.
Yeah.
I wasn't looking for them to give me referrals. I was looking for them to give me advice.
Yeah.
And then the next time around, they would ask, well, what exactly are you doing? And that's when it kind of flipped around. So that's one of the things I did learn is always ask, what do you do? What can I do to help you? And that's kind of how it started. What I also found that I was doing not quite advantageous for me is I was doing too much networking.
Okay. Say more
Because
about that. What does that mean?
what that means is in this world, you can go to 3 networking groups a day, 5 days a week,
Got
which
it.
is what I was doing because I wanted to meet as many people as possible.
So I think what you're alluding to is that not all of those activities were equally beneficial. So you're getting out there in a lot of different ways. What did you find actually worked?
Meeting everybody there was great, but then following up with a one-to-one conversation.
Got it. So it was
Meeting
less about the
people,
networking events. Like you went there to meet people originally, but then it
yeah,
was, hey, I need to get these people in a one-on-one conversation where I
yeah,
can dive deep, get to know them, and understand if there might be some places I can add value or places where there's some synergy between the two things that we're doing.
right. I can add value to them, they can add value to me. And the one-to-one thing is I highly recommend it.
Yeah.
Get your networking groups in, find some people in those. You're always going to find at least one person you want to talk to further, because some of these groups are pretty large.
Yep.
Maybe not so much anymore. Post-COVID's a little bit different than pre-COVID was. Um, so I found it important to get to know people on an individual basis because you're in this particular business I have now, it's building relationships.
Yeah.
And you can't build a relationship unless you get somebody one-to-one out of the office or with a coffee. Because when you're in the big networking events, it's just very harried sometimes, and you may
Yeah.
not get to talk to somebody that you want to talk to.
So your business clearly started with just you as the person who's sort of doing all the things.
Yeah.
Has that shifted, or are you still the person who's both doing the business development of building relationships and then working with the customers and also trying to understand what's happening at the different facilities that you present?
Right. It's still just me.
Still just you. Okay.
Still just me. I did have an occasional person that I was trying to bring in as a 1099. I didn't really want to be an employer. Um,
Well, say more about that because clearly you were an employer in your last business for 15 years. So did you intentionally say, hey, in this second business, I don't want to have employees?
2 things I intentionally did.
Okay.
No employees and no more PowerPoint programs. No more PowerPoint
Oh, wow.
presentations.
No PowerPoints. Does that mean
No.
no meetings for you, John?
Lots of meetings.
Yeah, you just,
But
is what you mean by that is that you're more about making a genuine connection with people than
yeah,
trying to present them some sales deck of what they need to do?
right, right.
Got
You
it.
sit around a table, talk about what you're doing, what you're looking for, and that was very well received because too many people, death by PowerPoint.
Yeah.
And I vowed never to do a PowerPoint again.
Now, was that something that came from you or something that came from the franchisor? What?
Well, that came from me. I just didn't want to do PowerPoint anymore. I had
Got
enough
it.
of it.
So walk us through then the journey here. You started doing some networking. When did things start to take off for your business?
It took it took a couple of years. It took a couple of years of real hard work. I had a couple of clients that did move in, like one in 6 months, and then another 6 months, there was another 8 to 10. My goal was to get to 2 or 3 move-ins a month. You have to have goals.
Yep.
They're my goals. The only one I answer to is, in any single owner is, I answer to the person in the mirror. So I set goals. It took me a while to figure, I should probably write this down instead of just winging it, because I like to wing things, as you can tell by this conversation. Um, it was important that I at least have data-driven goals. So my really was all about, it wasn't about the financial end of it. It was about getting 2 or 3 clients to move into a place each month,
Yeah.
because the financial part follows. That's something that's there. It's going to be there and it's going to happen. The key was getting good referral sources and talking to the right people who, because there are people that can't afford it, but I work with them as well, because I got to know part of it. What I do is, because it can be expensive, is I have a lot of other resources, lower income places, programs that help. Because if someone calls and says, "Well, I can't afford that," I'm not, "Oh, sorry, see you later." Um,
Yeah.
I want to be a resource for them for any of that opportunity that I can give them.
Yeah. So it sounds like having some lower class places people can go to, maybe that are Medicare or Medicaid supported.
Yeah,
And when you say programs, you mean other ways for people to get financial support?
right. Subsidy, net federal or local subsidy programs. And I think I need to step back and say the premise of this business is, I don't charge money for this business, for the clients. I don't charge them. It's like
Yeah.
being a real estate agent for assisted livings.
Yeah.
And I only get compensated if my client moves in and stays for a month.
Yeah. Now,
So
all your clients local? Is this sort of an in-person connection thing for you, or is it broader than that?
mostly it's in person, mostly it's local, but the beauty of having this franchise or working with a franchise is there are other folks all around the country that do what I do. And we have a cross relationship, referral relationship. There's lots of time folks live in Florida, they want to come back north where I am to be close to their family, or the other way around. They want to go
Yeah.
get out of the snow and go south. So I have colleagues that I can connect with in Florida and Arizona and California and Iowa, if people, so to help people get to where they want to go.
And so is the franchisor managing and negotiating those relationships with the assisted living facilities, or are you also playing a role in that for the ones in your local market?
In my local market, it's mostly me
Okay.
doing the conversations and getting the contracts in place. The franchisor does have some national contracts, and there's a couple of those national assisted livings in my area, but most of them that I work with have been myself getting the contracts. And the franchisor gives you a skeleton of a contract that you can use, and that's what I used. You make it your own, but you get the basics from them.
Yep. So was this for you building this business a slow accumulation of all these networking things you were doing to meet with people, or at some point did you have some step function growth that happened based on a key referral partner or some other breakthrough?
I think the breakthrough really was, and I tell other owners and new owners, that in your third year is when it just clicks. And that's exactly what happened. And what the clicking is just something that happens if you've done all the steps properly in the beginning, and you've met all the right people, you've got the good referral sources, you've got relationships with the different assisted living communities. So when you have a client, you have a place you can call and talk about. So it just kind of clicked. All of the groundwork that I was doing it all of a sudden started clicking. And part of that also was getting key referral sources, learning. It took me a while to figure out. It was 6 months before I figured out I'm barking up the wrong tree here. I'm not doing the right thing. I'm not talking to the right people. And I had to step back a little bit and figure, okay, who are the right people to talk to? And that's what I figured that out on my own.
How did you figure that out? Was there some epiphany moment? Was there something that happened that triggered it for you? What?
I have to say it has to be a epiphany, a triggering kind of thing. Realizing that some of these people I was talking, not some of the people I was talking to, just didn't have a base of clientele that were looking to go to assisted living. So I had to think about who is going to have possibilities of people that can't go home. It's not safe to go home. And I figured out that hospitals, hospitals and rehabs. And
Hmm.
then I started taking my refocusing on that, hospitals, rehabs, and that seemed to be the triggering point.
Who in a hospital and rehab center? There's lots of people that work in those places.
Social
Social
workers, case
workers.
managers and social workers, discharge planners.
Oh,
The
okay.
people who, you go into the hospital and you can't go home, the social worker is in charge of getting you to a safe environment.
And how did you meet them? How did you figure out who those
I was
people were?
fortunate that in these networking groups back then, pre-COVID, and sometimes now, each of these hospitals and rehabs, they often had a marketing person because the hospitals and rehabs, they need patients
Yeah.
to stay open and make money and make their bills. So they would send these marketing folks or liaisons out to these networking events. And I just hitched my wagon to them and met them. And they were instrumental in getting me into the different places to do meetings
So
and
they
meet
were
people.
they were your intro into
Yes.
the discharged social workers.
Yeah. Yeah. Because I'm
Got it.
not somebody who just walks in places. I don't do that.
Yeah.
I want appointments. Um, I think walking in and interrupting somebody's day is tenuous at
Yeah.
best.
Okay, so John, I want to back up and look at the broader picture of your story because the thing that I find most interesting is you were somebody who built a very different kind of business with your first company. It was a
Hmm.
manufacturing based business. I'm sure you had a number of employees associated in that business. You ran it for 15 years before you sold it. And now you've come back to a business that's just you, solopreneur, and you seem happier than ever. So
Absolutely.
help me understand, like, you've lived a few different lives. You've lived the life of a business owner with a scaling business. You've lived the life of a sales manager in a corporate company, and you've lived the life now of a solopreneur. So, what's happened? What have you learned about yourself in this process?
I think I've always come from a service mind. Psychology, sociology was, what I did in the very beginning. I was a probation officer for adolescents for a little while when I graduated college. So it really became I'm a very service oriented person. Um, and even with my roles in sales for the manufacturers and in the battery companies, I kind of tweaked it to a point where I was trying to provide a service. I wasn't selling a product. The product was there, and you had to, and that's what you talked about. But I think what I learned was my style of sales is really all about education and setting expectations.
Okay.
So even in the world of high tech, you have widget A and widget B. Even in the world of batteries, you have this and that. And hey, Mr. Engineer, this is what I've got. This is what this does. This is what that does. What do you think? And let's talk about it. What's going to solve your problem? And how can I be of service to you? And it is a very different, the transition or the segue from a high tech, hardcore sell world of high tech industry to a human world of, no offense to those in high tech, to a more touchy feely world of working with folks who are in a very emotional situation that are trying to trying to make a decision and not knowing what to ask. So again, it's okay, my client, this is what assisted living is. This is what it does. This is your issue. These are a couple places that will be able to solve your issue. What do you think? And how can I help you figure it out? Again, education, and most importantly, setting expectations, because too often people have expectations, life in general, that they get disappointed by because they're not educated enough on how to set the expectations, or a lot of times can't grapple with the reality of that expectation. Of you've got unrealistic expectations, and I'm going to tell you they're unrealistic, and I'm going to tell you why. And so that's kind of
Yeah.
the service world. It's the world of service.
I think what I'm hearing, John, is this hard charging business first Boston guy is really super gooey on his inside, and he found his purpose in working hard toward helping people solve a really human problem as opposed to a really technical problem, which is where most of your career was focused.
A soft and gooey, don't tell anybody, but yeah.
Yeah, I won't tell anybody except for anyone who listens to this podcast.
Yeah, and that's why this has been phenomenal. I mean, this has been, again, the most rewarding thing. It is the hardest job I've ever had,
Say more
but
about
the
that.
most rewarding. Harder because you've got to be out there every day talking to people and telling people what you do, because this type of a job is not something that's known.
Yeah,
People don't know that there are resources out there like myself that can help them choose a good, safe place. And
got it.
so
So
it's
it's
all about
constant marketing and development.
constant marketing, speeches, talking. I'll talk to anybody, and I to let them know what I do. I even had a client sitting next to me at a Patriots game who wasn't a client, but then became one by the end of the game.
Yeah,
You
well,
know,
those games aren't as fun to watch these days, so
yeah,
maybe there's something better to talk about.
yeah, yeah.
So, John, say more about how your life is different. You're talking about never having worked harder, but never feeling more fulfilled. The name of this podcast is Create the Life You Want. And the reason we named it that is because we really believe that business is not just a tool for making money. Even when we think about the primary motivation to make money, it's really about having money as a tool to create the life you want. And
Right.
we believe you don't have to wait to do that. In fact, a business can be an amazing tool for creating that. So I'm curious, how have you used or built this business to create the life that you want?
Uh, I wasn't sure what I wanted, Jeremy, to begin with, except to be my own boss.
Okay.
That was the first objective. What can I do to be my own boss? And there were a few things that I tried to do. It didn't work out, and I didn't like them that much anyway. But this discovery of this position that didn't exist 10 years ago has led me to, lifestyle entrepreneur. What's my lifestyle? I want to have my own business. Um, I want to be available for family and friends. I want a mountain bike when I want a mountain bike. I want to just get off, run out the door for an hour or so if I want to. And in the beginning, it wasn't there because I was working so hard.
Yeah.
But the goal is to get to that point where I think someone said to me the other day, and it says that they said, John, you seem much more content. And I think that's perfect. I think I'm very content with what I'm doing, very happy with what I'm doing. This time of where I've ended up is again unexpected, but it's a good place.
Yeah.
I've
I'm
got a,
hearing I'm hearing three things from you. I'm hearing the you like having the freedom to decide when you're going to work and when you're not going to work, and being your own boss affords you that freedom. You like the control that comes from being able to sort of set your own priorities and drive what you think is important. And you finally found something that fulfills you in a way that hasn't before, because you feel like what you're delivering to people makes a real tangible difference in a place that matters.
yeah, yeah. It's very, very validating for me, Jeremy. Very validating because every person I've helped, they all have said, "Thank you so much, John. We never would have found this place without you." And that gives me chills every time I say it, even now,
Yeah.
because it validates everything I've done and everything I believe in and all the hard work I've put in and the continued hard work that I'm going to be doing. Um,
So what's the
it's
plan?
validation.
You're enjoying this so much, you're just going to do it until you need to find an assisted living facility for yourself, or what? What's the plan?
I think I've got another couple of years left before I'm done. You know, I will at some point sell sooner than later because 2 years goes by fast.
Yeah.
But I have an exit strategy, and that is to be done within the next 2 years. You know, have somebody good that buys it, someone I can count on that will continue to carry the torch
Yeah.
of this very um, important position that I put myself in.
I could see you, based on what you've shared with me, John, selling this to someone, but sticking around in a part-time capacity to support both the transition and continue to have some of those experiences with families. Is that something you think about, or is for you it's a hard at 2 years I'm out and I'm going to go drink pina coladas on the beach in Mexico?
No, no, I'll keep doing something.
Yeah.
You know, I will help the new owner if they want it, and they should want it. Um, and I'll keep my fingers in the pie of some sort. I'll do something else, healthcare related, senior related,
Something
after
new
I
to figure
sell.
out.
Yeah, I'm not going to just stop.
Well, John, you've had a couple different lives where you have operated. I'm curious, as you reflect back on your 15 years with a manufacturing business and on your 8-ish years with this franchise, helping people find assisted living facilities. If someone comes to you and says, "Hey, I'm thinking about being a business owner. I'd love your advice." What's like the single most important thing that you would say to them?
Always respond to your messages.
Okay, say more
Don't
about that.
don't ghost anybody. Somebody sends you an email, respond to it. Don't ignore anybody. Um, that's important. There's nothing that makes me crazier than, and it happens more often than I would hope, where I ask a question of somebody or send an email to somebody or make a phone call and I don't get a response.
Yeah.
Um, work, focus on, don't go too broad. I think that was a big mistake that I made in the beginning. Both businesses was you're living in a certain place, stay within 30 miles of your place and kill it there and then move
Yeah.
out. Don't start. I mean, because I was being the only person that was doing it at the time outside of another company that was much, much further away from me. I ran myself too, I broadened myself out too much. And it took me a while to
Got it.
figure out, all right, draw a circumference 30 miles from my house and just kill it in there and
Yeah.
then go further and further out.
It's interesting that you say broaden, because it also seems like part of your story is you had a broad approach to start with, which helped you figure out where the real opportunity was so that you could narrow it in. So how do you deal with that dichotomy of some of the value in the early stage of a business of being broad, trying a lot of different things so you can find out what works, versus being so broad that you're pulling yourself in 1,000 different directions and you can't even see what's helping move the business forward?
When you're not making any money, when you're not having an income, maybe you're too broad and you're not, maybe you're not focusing on what you should be focusing on.
So you're saying that the revenue coming in should be an indicator to you of whether you should be broadening or focusing. And if the
Yes.
revenue is light, get more focused. If the revenue
Figure out,
is rolling in, feel free to think bigger and
yeah,
broader. Okay.
bring it in small. You shrink your horizon a little bit.
Love it. Uh, John, anything else you'd want to share with our audience or anything you want them to know from your own personal journey?
No, don't be afraid to try it. It can't hurt to try it. Both things that I was doing was something I knew nothing about. I did not know a battery from a stick on the ground. I did not know what an assisted living was and what the importance of having somebody help a family do that.
Do you think
Uh,
not being an expert in those things actually helped you?
Probably. I mean, yeah, I was not, what's the word I'm looking for? I wasn't jaded in any way whatsoever. Um, I was open to people that said, you're out of your mind, or, yeah, that's a great idea.
It sounds like you used your lack of knowledge as a way to build relationships with people that became helpers for you in the long run.
Yeah, no, yeah, I think just lots of questions and lots of interest in what they were doing and how they did it and looking for advice from them. People, I mean, look at me. People like to talk about what they've done and what they're doing and talk about themselves and whatnot. But yeah, it's get to know somebody else, get to know everybody else. I didn't know anything about this stuff,
But you figured it out.
but I figured it out.
Yeah. You sort of glossed over, and this may be my last question for you, John. You glossed over, hey, I tried a couple things that didn't work. And maybe it would be good to share a little bit more about those just for the context of not everything you try that's brand new from scratch works out, and that's okay. You've had a couple that have,
Yeah.
and it sounds like a couple that haven't. So, what can you tell us
Yeah.
about those ones that didn't work out and what you learned in that process?
Um, well, one of them had to do with selling um, not vitamins, but nutrition. I'm very interested in fitness and trying to get away from the power of the farmers. So one of them was an opportunity to represent this company in Florida and sell their brand of, as they called, nutraceuticals.
Okay.
Um, mm. No, it wasn't, no.
It didn't work. What
Uh,
did you learn about yourself and what you wanted from that experience?
Um, I think it was fun. I think it was educational. I did talk to people who might be interested in buying, but I never sold a single one, and it actually turned out to be a scam, which I didn't know.
Oh,
So that was kind of devastating. Um, but it was something I was interested in trying and interested in doing. Um,
but a similar formula, something you found that piqued your curiosity that you started to
yeah,
dig into and say, hey, how could I potentially turn this into a business? Sounds
yeah.
like that one didn't go very far
That did
before
not
you
go
find
well
that
at
one.
all. That was
Yeah.
one of those that did not go well at all.
In hindsight, with that opportunity, what would you have done differently knowing what you know today?
Well, something I always do now
Yeah.
is there's website about scamming or
Okay.
people who are known to have been scammers, and this company was at the top of that list, and I never knew about this report. But after I left, I looked them up, and it was like, geez, if I had seen this before, I never would have done it.
Do you do that now with every person you meet, all these one-on-one coffees? Like, how often do you go to
Not the people, like companies,
the companies?
like
Okay.
companies, companies,
Got it.
things that might interest me, and sometimes they show up, sometimes they don't.
So what I'm hearing from you is one takeaway for you is I've got to do better diligence about
Yeah,
who's behind, what's behind these companies that I'm considering, whether that be the franchisor or whether that be in the case of this nutraceuticals company that didn't pan out.
Right.
What was the other thing you tried that didn't work out during the layoff period?
There was title research for real estate agents.
Okay.
There was something going on legally with title researching, and a friend of mine was doing it. He was an assessor,
Okay.
and he started opening this company that was going to do title research as well because it was this long ago, I don't remember the whole deal with it, but there's some kind of legality going on where assessors would have to become either certified in title research or something like that. And again, it was interesting, it was different, but it just never worked. There was nothing good or bad about it. It just never went anywhere. Did a lot of
What
research
does it
and
mean when you
stuff.
say it didn't work? Because, I would challenge you that what you found with the assisted living placement franchise took you 2 years before it really worked. So what was
Yeah.
different about these opportunities that didn't versus the one that did and just needed you to commit and invest over a long period of time?
I think it turned out not to be really, really necessary.
Okay.
The upcoming laws of change or whatever they were going to be never happened.
So it didn't solve a
So
real problem.
no, they solved the problem that people thought was going to happen,
Yeah.
but it never really did.
So that sounds like it's true in both of the cases that didn't work out. You had a nutraceutical that didn't really do what it said it was supposed to do. And then you
Yeah,
had this title research that didn't really add value because it wasn't legally necessary. So it's just superfluous cost.
right.
As opposed to the assisted living where you're solving a problem that can't be solved in any other way than trying to find a safe place to put mom or
Right.
dad.
Yeah. And the future is endless. Everybody gets old. Some people want to stay home. Some people are not safe to stay home.
Yeah.
And so this kind of a business is very much needed and should be around for a very long time. This type of service.
Yeah. Well, John, I really appreciated getting to hear about your story. And I think the thing I find most fascinating is that you had been an entrepreneur, maybe the way that people suspect an entrepreneur should be, growing and scaling a company that's trying to take on the world, and then transitioning to a company that's much more purpose-based and less about expanding as big as it can be and more about, hey, this is the lifestyle and the impact that I want to make in my world. And I think that is a unique way that might resonate with some people when they think about creating the life they want. I've interviewed a lot of people. I don't know that I've interviewed as many that seem as stoked or as happy as you. Um, and I'm also surprised that you're a real softie at heart, but I love it. I love the
Yeah.
difference you're making, and I love the passion you have for what you do. So I really appreciate you taking the time with us today, John.
Thank you, Jeremy. I appreciate the feedback, and it is all about making a difference.
If people have any questions or they want to reach out to you, John, is there a way you would ask them to do that? It's okay to
Well,
say no, because I know you have to respond to all your emails and messages.
absolutely call me up. Yeah, call me on the phone. I will answer my phone. If I can answer my phone, I answer my phone. Doesn't matter what time or what day. 508 878 8878.
Great. Thanks, John, so much. Appreciate your time. Thanks for listening to the Create the Life You Want podcast. If you like what you heard, you can subscribe to future episodes by clicking the subscribe button, you know where. If you're an aspiring business owner, you may also want to subscribe to the Create the Life You Want newsletter for more inspiration and tips delivered to your inbox every week. You can find the link to that in the show notes, as well as on my personal website, jeremyames.com. If you've already decided you want to start or buy a business, consider exploring your financing options by heading to our sponsor's website at www.guidantfinancial.com. That's GUIDANT financial.com. See you in the next episode.